Today's guest has had his artwork featured on Topps Gallery, Topps Series 1, and Topps Star Wars Masterwork in collaboration with companies like Topps, Upper Deck, and more. Matt Stewart, welcome to Art of the Card. But what can you tell us about yourself? And thank you again for joining us this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been an artist for a couple of decades now, doing freelance work, doing trading card artwork for the last 8 years, 9 years. Been quite a while now, actually. And then before that, I was an archaeologist. Went to school for that. It's all up in Canada too, by the way. So I live in Calgary, Alberta, on the western side of Canada. But I was originally born outside of St. Louis, so I rooted for the Cardinals my entire life. Yeah, that's pretty much a nutshell. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm fascinated by the archaeology. I love that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about
and I
that.
love the artwork as well. So,
well, I think this is our first interviewee from Canada, so north of the border. I think that's great. You know, we're actually going international with Art of the Card. But then also, yeah, tell us a little bit more about the archaeology. I think it's really interesting that you've been doing, you know, the card art for the last 10 years, but that also speaks to, you know, it seems like you have a lot of other kind of design history leading up to that. So tell us a little bit about that, the archaeology, and how that led into where you are now.
Yeah, like I was always drawing, even from like, you know, little kid. I would draw stuff out of like anatomy books and, you know, G.I. Joes and all that kind of stuff. And then when I was older and I started going to university, I loved drawing, but I also loved archaeology, you know, like Indiana Jones and all that kind of stuff, right? And I started taking courses and I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually pretty good at this stuff. You know, I was actually getting B's and A's in these classes, so I kept going with it. And before I knew it, I was a consulting archaeologist, which is you work on these projects where you go out into the, you know, wilderness, forest, or whatever. You're doing a project for like, let's say a lumber company. And we'd be out there for 2-3 weeks at a time doing survey work and then mitigation work and all that kind of stuff. Ended up doing my master's in archaeology. And I was an archaeologist throughout Western Canada, which really, really enjoyed it. But on the downside, I was always away from home. And also finding work became a little bit more erratic. So I started doing more and more artwork. And before I knew it, over the last about 7 years, I transitioned from archaeology to graphic design. I've been doing a lot more graphic design over the last few years, while still doing, you know, a little bit of archaeology here or there, like, you know, I've been reading up on it and stuff like that.
I think that's
Very
fascinating. Cool. Yeah, and that's incredible to see that how that work in the field, it sounds like, you know, started to really kind of lay the foundations for your design career.
Yeah, like in archaeology, I would always do the it's called stratigraphic profiles, which is the drawings of, as you excavate the earth, you'd have differences in soil type and where artifacts and features might be. Like, let's say you have a fire pit, which is called a hearth, and it'd be this like charcoal stain in the soil profile wall of what you're excavating. And I would always draw those. And I really, really enjoyed it. People around me were like, hey, Matt's really good at this. Let's always have him draw these. Yeah, I just kind of progressed out of that.
I have a archaeology sports card question that maybe ties it together. What's your favorite discovery in archaeology and in sports cards?
I'm not sure if I really have like a discovery like that just I found. Yeah, I found a lot of really cool arrowheads and things like that. But probably sites that I was taken to that were already known, but not many people get to visit. Like I saw this one stone effigy place that was right up on the banks of the Red Deer River, which is in Alberta. And they're just all these stone effigies all over the place. So it was like different like characters and things like that, and like symbols all along the earth. And then massive teepee rings that were really thick walled, massive diameters. And it turns out that it was from I think it was the 1500s, so late period. First Nations are in this area and stuff like that. Tons of oral stories. And we had a couple of elders with us. It was just such a cool experience hearing the stories from the First Nations elders and seeing the effigies. And it was a beautiful spot too, looking down on the river. So probably one of the coolest places I've ever been as an archaeologist in Canada. And then for sports cards, probably the first thing that comes to mind is this random antique store in Saskatchewan that I went to. I was doing field work And the person that I was working with, she loved antiques, and she would always go to antique stores whenever we would be out in small little towns. So we went to this one store, and it had these like Bowman baseball cards from the 1940s and 50s, and it's just like dozen or so of them. No big names or anything like that. They're all dog-eared and stuff like that. But the guy pretty much gave them to me. He's like, "Oh, I don't want these, whatever." And I still have them to this day. And, like, I don't have a massive older baseball collection, so like those are kind of a little special place for me in there. Mm. Oh, cool. I wish I had family members that collected cards. I haven't inherited or been given anything like that. So.
Yeah, yeah, those are all right. Yeah, okay. No, that's incredible. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our lightning round. Back live. Awesome.
Growing up, it was Ozzie Smith, hands down.
Ozzy.
Being a kid in the '80s, growing up in St. Louis, I still remember going to baseball games in St. Louis, seeing Ozzie, doing his backflips in the outfield. And then because I'm still a Cardinals fan, I love Pujols, Yachty, Wayno. We even my wife and I did a special trip back in May to St. Louis to see the three of them play. And, it was absolutely worth it. They're great players off the field too. So no, not some Toronto Blue Jays players though, because it's kind of cool. Like Toronto Blue Jays, they're my number two team. They have to be because they live in Canada, right? But in the World Series '92, they became Canada's team, and they've just stayed that way this entire time. And so every year they do this cross Canada tour with about half a dozen of the players, and also Buck Martinez and Campbell. They also come out with the team, and so they'll hit up everything from like small towns to the big cities like Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton and stuff like that. And I've seen them three times now, I believe, when they've come across Canada. Yeah. Uh, Probably just baseball. Oh my god, I have no idea. Yeah, yeah. I'm not. I enjoy sports, but I'm horrible at sports, so it'd probably be something embarrassing. So, right-handed. Yeah, pretty much on and off. Like when I was going to university, all of a sudden I was like, I have no money, so I stopped collecting. So there's 5 years there. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I missed out, Kobe and all that. And then when I went to do my master's, then I missed out on my Trout era, 2011 and 2010, all that. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, yeah, thank you. That was great, Matt. So we've talked a little bit about how long you've been an artist and an illustrator, and a little bit about when you made that pivot to sports. Did you ever have an artist or an illustrator in either field that was a mentor to you in your career?
no, I mean, there's been certain people that like online or other professionals that I've always really admired their work.
Sure.
But for like a personal one-on-one basis, not really. Mm, no, like I never went to like art school. I did graphic design school and things like that. I took art night classes and things like that. But no, I
And
never went
who,
to a school where like there's professors or something like that.
sure, sure. Who are some of the people that you said you kind of do admire in the space or in the hobby, whether professional designers, or
Yeah.
someone here doing trading card art?
For trading card art, I mean, there's a bunch of really talented artists out there,
Hmm.
and it's kind of cool. A lot of us are online, so a lot of us know each other. So Chris Penix, he does a lot of the Star Wars artwork for Topps. He works on the living set cards,
Okay.
and Carlos Caballero. I always mess up his last name, but it's Carlos. Anyways, they both do the Star Wars living set cards.
Nice.
Absolutely gorgeous artwork. Dan Bergeron, I want to say is how you say his last name. He's another Topps artist that does amazing work, and he's doing some baseball artwork that I've seen preview images of, haven't been released yet. And man, like it's one of these sets where like I heard that they're going to use some artwork for it. I was like, oh, why didn't I get to work on it? And then I saw Dan's work, posted on our little groups, and I was like, yeah, okay, I get why he's doing it. Stuff
Right,
is so
right.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, level of respect there for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So for anyone out there that wants to work on like create artwork for the companies, there's a couple of different ways of going about it. But first and foremost, it's all about you creating the artwork, you looking out there and being like, okay, I really enjoy, let's say, the Topps 2020 sets. And I'm going to create artwork that I could see being as part of that, and then posting that online, looking up contact information for the companies, sending them your samples, and it's samples of stuff that like I can see this being part of that set, and doing all that work. It may take a week, may take years. It all depends on luck of the draw and your skill level. But anyways, and so that's the process for like getting involved in those sets, getting hired on. And then once you start working on it, then either, you have the people that work on the Topps 2020 sets, those are tend to be established artists and they just work on those sets. And every so often they'll work on some subsets for this trading card set or that trading card set. And then you have sketch card artists like myself who we get an invite for a set. Let's say Topps Museum Collection that just came out. I got the invite to work on that, so they emailed me last December, and they were like, "How many cards would you like to do?" So I was like, "Okay, well, I'll do 50 cards." And then and as part of that, I get paid for it, and I also get artist proofs that I can then sell. And those artist proofs are more original drawings done on the sketch cards, but they say AP on the back, one of one, all that kind of stuff. You're buying it directly from the artist as opposed to opening it in a pack. So then I do those cards, and then I have a deadline and stuff like that. Ship them off to Topps, and then from all of those cards, they look at those and they're like, "Well, I really like this Vladimir Guerrero senior card that Matt drew, and we're going to reproduce that as part of the Canvas collection, which is what happened this year." And so that card's reproduced. And then the other 50 cards that I drew that are all original drawings, those are also included in the set that you can open up in the packs.
Fascinating.
Mm, mm, mm. Yes, they did.
Well, yeah,
There's the sorry, there's a company. It's RR Parks, and I think another company that's also like really small, independent. They do funky sets. They include cards in their products that say you draw it yourself, and it's like a blank little sketch card. And well, you had it for Mystery Science Theater 3000. This
hmm.
trading card that they did for that. Yeah, it's really really cool. People made the same analogy. They're like, "Oh, this brings me back to the '90s when Upper Deck did that stuff." Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, to piggyback off of that, I think there's a greater demand for these illustrated cards, not just the base cards, but these sketch cards in the ultra modern sets. I think there's so much, everybody has so much glossy base stock cards, right? And so when you get something that's on actual artist canvas, used with actual tools, I think that really, really stands out in a way that's different from getting a jersey patch card. For me personally, I just think it's such a cool piece of hobby, kind of history that you have then that's still representative of the card, but just a really, really unique pool that you might be able to find, through some of these, again, accessible sets. They're not necessarily hobby exclusive boxes. You can go and pull some of these
Mhm.
out of top series one and series two, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Oh no. Yeah, I've worked on Top Series one, two, and update and gallery and museum collection. That's like every year for the past I don't know how many years. And there's a few other artists like Brian Kong. He's done
Mm,
sports artwork for God like 15 years or something like that. He's one of the first guys that Topps actually hired to do all the baseball card artwork. And yeah, he's been working on like the gallery and Topps, the flagship sets for that long. So they've been doing it forever, and it's also included in the retail packs too. You could go to Walmart, pick up a box or pack, and possibly get a card.
I love to pick up the gallery, just here at retail, in my neck of the woods at Target, Walmart,
Mm.
etc. Like you said, it's one of my favorite products. I want to follow up on something that you mentioned earlier, though, when you were talking about the process of working with Tops, and you said that you get a certain number of those cards that you get to distribute as artist originals. And is that something that you negotiate with Tops? Is that something that fluctuates with those sets, or is it just kind of a natural byproduct of illustrating 50, 75, 100 cards and sending them in?
It's pretty standard. Well, it is standard across
Okay.
any of the trading card companies. It's not unique
Okay.
just to Topps. It's all part of the project payment.
I see.
Even if you work at like Marvel comic books and you're
Mhm.
drawing the latest X-Men book, part of your payment is you get the page rate, which is no different than your sketch card rate.
Mhm.
Plus, you get copies of the comic book that you drew for Marvel that then you can do whatever you want with. And with Tops, along with any of the other companies, it's a couple of artist proofs per X number of cards you do. It's different per artist, whatever. But
Mhm.
yeah, and it's all just part of your payment. And some
That's a
people keep
really
them for themselves. Like I know some people have massive collection of all their artist proofs, so they're saving for their kids, or they just hang it up on their wall. And then other people like myself, we sell most of it.
I think it's a fascinating dynamic to the work of being an artist. Again in 2022, is that you're able to have this kind of built-in revenue stream, to the work that you're doing. That's a derivative from the process that you're taking. Chris and I were speaking yesterday when we were talking about getting some of this stuff set up, for again our triumphant return. And Chris, I think, was one to point out that some of the sketch cards in particular, kind of look like they could be described as in various forms of development, or kind of some of them are more simplified than others with how those illustrations come together. When you put pen to paper, and some of those are sketches, some of them have color added to them, some of them look a little bit more finished than others as well. A little curious to see if there's any sort of overlap there, for you, or if it does feel really like two distinct kind of phases of your artistry life.
Kind of like makes me think of how with archaeology, like anything else, if I was like drawing for it or creating designs for it, you create the designs and artwork based off of what the client and what the project asks from you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm illustrating a scientific illustration, so like I did a bunch of illustrations of stone tool artifacts for someone a few years back. And with that, they needed very, very precise illustrations. It was all pointillism. Color would have just made things more complicated. So a little bit less was better in this case. But also, any of the dots that I was placing, any of the line work that I was using, had to be precise. And it was also, much larger illustrations. I had a good amount of time to work on it. There was no crazy deadline right there. Now, with sketch cards, kind of the same theme with that of like, well, I have a shorter time frame to work on these cards. So I can't just spend days and days working on one card. I can only spend about 45 minutes to an hour on one card. But color, I find, is better for most of these cards. The average collector prefers even just a splash of color, even if it's monochromatic. You're drawing, let's say, Devers from Boston Red Sox. Do the card all in red. Someone would appreciate that more than probably black and white. Now, there are some collectors that love black and white cards. So like doing some of the Star Wars cards in black and white, they love that. Probably more than your average baseball collector loving a black and white baseball card. But now that I think about it, if you're drawing like Honus Wagner, someone would probably prefer a black and white Honus Wagner than you making up some color scheme for a Honus Wagner card. So it's kind of like you're doing the artwork based off of whatever the brief is from the client and what you know that the collectors would really value, and also what you yourself can bring to the table. So I know some artists, like Maz, he does a lot of the baseball artwork, and now he's working on stuff for Fanatics. He has this really sketchy style. It works for him for his time frame. He uses color, and he does it in a very different way than other artists. So his work stands out from someone like my artwork, where I'm using a lot more painted stuff or maybe Copic markers and more of a comic book style. You can always tell my artwork apart from Maz's, and that's kind of cool.
Can you break down your toolkit for us and talk about, what are some of the tools that you prefer to use? Are there certain brands or are there certain, styles of pens and markers, right, that give your work that, Matt Stewart look?
Yeah, I am all over the place. I'm actually like looking over here because I have all of these art supplies right next to me. So if I'm doing like a Marvel comic book project, I want to make it look more like a comic book, and that's actually what Upper Deck is looking for. They're not looking for a lot of photorealistic stuff. They're looking for stuff that fits into the world with comic books. Right. So I use a lot of these guys, Copic markers, and then I'll use some Faber-Castell pencil crayons.
Nice.
And I have so many inking pens, and they all have different tips. They all have different, even like levels of blackness to them. So sometimes I'll want to go for like a lighter black or heavier black, thicker brush strokes, all that kind of stuff. So I use that for a lot of my comic book based stuff. And then if I'm doing like the portraits for, so this is one I'm actually working on right now.
Incredible.
So that one's not done. That's Julio Rodriguez. And by the time you air this, it'll already be like out there and stuff. But this is for a museum collection that just came out. It's one of my artist proofs that I'm working on. So one of the nice things, I have a little bit more time to work on it. So the lines there, that's all sketch out in pencil. And then I use the pencil crayons, these guys, Faber-Castell pencil crayons. And then I'll just do line art around there. And then as I start painting the face for that, here's my palette.
Lovely.
That's all designer gouache. And then I paint that in there, and then I use more pencil crayons to refine it, and then just keep working on it from there.
This is a very in the weeds question. Do you seal it so like when they put these in a pack, like it's not all getting smudged and all of a sudden you have ink everywhere all over the other cards?
Yeah, and that's becoming more and more important lately. With the levels of printing process, a lot of artists are noticing there are roller marks coming on some of the cards.
Mm.
It's just it happens. It's no one's fault. It's places just trying to print off all the Pokemon cards at once,
Yeah, yeah.
And now we have the baseball cards to print off.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So if you're spraying the cards, it helps prevent those kind of roller marks, that smudging and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then even if the roller marks get on it, I've told other collectors this. I don't see one around here. Just buy a white eraser, like that you'd find at Staples or whatever, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
really good, the $3-4 white eraser, and then lightly take off that roller mark, and it will take it off and not ruin anything. But to your point about spraying cards, I have different types of spray cans, whether it's for if I'm using acrylic paint or designer gouache or just Copic markers. I'll have something that I use on it. But if I'm doing an artist proof, where I know that I'm just doing it for a client or for myself that then I'll sell later on, I won't spray it quite often because the spray gives it either like a glossy or matte, more of a matte finish that sometimes I don't really want. I just want, that medium to shine through.
Gotcha.
And I know that the person's going to be good with it because it'll just be in, top loader or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess that goes to my question then, like, so that you have a blank card, Top sends you're doing your artist proof. So are they not putting those hand-drawn cards like in packs then? Or are they? Or they are?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
They are.
Okay. But it just like is dried and isn't, getting smudged and all that stuff, I'd assume. Because it would be brutal to like pull a one-of-one artwork and all of a sudden it's like, the paint is like scratched off from being up against something or,
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like the cards, it depends on the set, right? But if you
Yeah.
talk like a flagship or gallery, we would do those cards. They go in like actually no different than any like the 300 count boxes you might find in the store. Put those in the box. Those get shipped off to either the art director or it'll go to the printing house. And then the people there then separate them, make sure that they're all approved by the licensor, whether it's MLB or Marvel or whatever. And then they get placed in stacks. And I'm not exactly sure what happens from there, but I do know that then they get inserted into the packs with the machines and all that stuff.
Yeah. I know everybody hates redemptions, but it could be cool if they like did redemption so it comes in a nice like artist box where it's like you said in that top loader or something. That'd be pretty cool.
Well,
I don't know,
really
a little
cool.
like a story about the artist so you like can see. Imagine getting like Andy Warhol to draw a Topps card back in the day, and all of a sudden he becomes who he is, and you have this like cool piece. But
anyway, which there's some really famous artists that have done sketch cards in the past. Adam Hughes comes to mind. He's a big name comic book artist. His stuff sells for thousands of dollars now, and he did tons of sketch cards for like the Indiana Jones sets and Star Wars sets back in the 2000s.
Yeah, very cool. I know I love the like Metal Universe cards from the 90s, and I know they like worked with the comic book illustrators from Marvel and stuff. So like every now and then I know they'll never come up, but I'll search on eBay of like Metal Universe sketches or something and see if like anybody's like releasing like a print or drawn. I always like to see like how toys were designed or whatever and see if anybody ever releases those like early concept sketches, but I haven't found anything yet. So
there's a Facebook group for Lord of the Rings trading cards. And so I did some artwork on the set that's coming out from Cryptozoic pretty soon. So I joined this group to, sell some artists first and also check out like the artwork that people are posting. Man, there's this one guy that showed he has, I think 4 of the 6 sketch cards that created the Chrome sketch card for this Topps Lord of the Rings set that came out in the 2000s. And it's so cool. Yeah, you're right. Like, it'd be amazing if they did more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No,
Joe, you had something to say. I thought so.
I was on the fence, thinking about the ones of ones. Even if it does get smudged, I think you're still looking at an original piece. It's completely unique and it's still an original artifact. But to your point, Chris, no, but you want it to be in good condition. I would say if there was ever anything seriously wrong with it, I assume Topps would do something through that redemption program, to make sure that you got a good card, get in touch with Matt or one of those other artists, and make sure that the collector is made whole and everything's right.
I, I was just gonna say I wanted to touch on when we were talking about like the style of the project. Oftentimes artists have like a really set style, and I feel like your style from looking through your Instagram is it's very complimentary. Like you have some really great portraits of that comic style, and then some of the more full figure of the full catcher is more simplified, but it all like has a really exciting feel to it. I don't know. When I was looking at your Instagram, it like literally takes me back to like my friend that I grew up with that was an incredible artist, and we would be like, draw these Ninja Turtles for us, and we had his drawings like in our room and stuff. And that's really what your cards do for me. Like I think great design and great artwork gives you an emotional feeling. And so when Joe said we were going to talk with you, I was like super excited because I instantly was like back in my bedroom with my friends Ninja Turtles and Jordan drawings, like, and I know I have them still probably at my parents' house. Yeah, so like how have you, do you have a, I don't know, I would just love to hear more about how you draw, or like if you have favorite players to draw. I know we always want to talk to like artists about that, and characteristics of what you like to pull out of a player or something like that. Just would love to hear more about how you do what you do a little bit. I don't know. I think it's really
Nice.
great.
Yeah, there is actually a lot of thought process, I guess, that I put into what I'm going to draw, like before I even start, putting pencil to paper for these cards. Um, Recently for flagship, I decided that I would draw one set was all shortstops, and then all catchers for series one, which I think I just finished off posting all of those on Instagram. So like every sketch card that I did was a catcher from each team across the league, and then shortstops, and then pitchers. Yeah, just kind of like changing it up a little bit of fun for myself too, because like there's certain teams I'm like, I have no idea who's catching for Miami this year. Cool,
Mm-hmm.
that's who it is. I even learn a little bit more about the players. Um, and then I always think of the collectors of what they would like to see, like because I'm really active on Twitter. I follow a lot of other fellow sports card collectors, and I always see someone saying, "Oh man, where are the Pirates this year? There's no Pirates cards this year." And so I make sure that like I do have at least one sketch card of a Pirates player in there. Now,
Mm-hmm.
is that collector going to find that sketch card? Probably not. But at least I've drawn that one Pirates player for
Yeah.
that collector. I'll even
Yep.
post sometimes on Twitter what players people would like to see me draw
Mm-hmm.
for a set. Like I'll never say like what the set is, but I'll say like, oh, mystery, baseball set coming up. What would you like to see me draw? So I draw Trey Mancini so many times. People absolutely love Trey. Every time I ask, they're like, draw Trey. So he always ends up being in almost every set. Yeah.
Do a lot of the new top sets, do they ever have you draw older players, or is it all pretty much current for the kind of current stuff that they want to see?
Yeah, it's primarily current stuff for the flagship, like Series 1, 2 update. They really want to focus on that because the cards that are going to be in the sets, that reflects the modern current players.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of nod to like they'll have one Jeter subset, but the rest
Yep.
of it's all like Freeman and Mookie and all those guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gallery is a little bit of a split, so they're okay with drawing some more of the older players, and then museum collection, that's where they want us to draw whoever.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some limitations because like a player still has to sign off on the rights of
Yep.
like Hank Aaron, his estate is like, yeah, no, totally go and draw Hank Aaron. That's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other players that are like, what, I played in the league, I'm good, I'm done.
Yeah. Have you ever had players that have said, it was interesting when we interviewed Terry Smith that did the Provisions cards back in the day. He was friends with one of the players that he did a card, and he's like, I know he won't sign that card because the way he designed it. And he's never told me personally, but he's like, I've heard many people that we all know have said that he's unhappy with it. Have you ever heard about a player like, oh man, that's not my good side, or like I don't throw that way? I don't know. Like, have you ever heard anything from anybody?
No, I've not had all that much interaction online with players or celebrities that I've drawn for sets. But the few times that I have, they've all been very, very positive.
Yep.
Most recently, and by the way, this is one of the more common things, is that it's someone's mother that finds me online. So, what's his name? Cal Raleigh, the catcher for the Mariners.
Okay.
His mom is on Twitter, and she found the drawing, and she's like, "Oh my god, my son is on a baseball card." Yeah, so I've
That's
had
awesome.
that kind of stuff happen. A few
That's
times.
really cool.
incredible. That's actually another great segue for us. I couldn't help but notice when I was going through a few cards, Matt, that you have your own card as part of the Topps Gallery artist feature. What does that feel like as an artist to have your name and likeness on a card? Is that a card that you own currently as well? And just again, did your mom, or have you had that moment, right? Of wow, I'm on a card. I think we all kind of I know I would love that feeling one day. I think Chris, that you would too. So
I have my rookie card from SeaWorld back in like 1992. So.
Yeah, PSA 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's it like to have your name and likeness on the card, man?
Equal parts. Ooh, this is really cool, and I'm kind of embarrassed that my face is now on a freaking card that people are collecting, and more than likely being like, "Who is this guy?" Toss. But yeah, I do have a couple of copies of it. I sent one to my mom. She thought it was cool. But it was just, I love the idea that a company like Topps took the time to spotlight some of the artists like this. It's really, really cool. It goes a long ways for collectors too to find out about who are the artists doing the cards. And so that year, that set, I did, I think, of like a dozen or so of the base card drawings. So a bunch of my artwork was being reproduced in that set alongside these other 6 artists. Yeah, it was great exposure for all of us. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
And
I want to get a shelf. Oh, sorry. I was like, I want to get a shelf of everybody we talked to and get like a card. Like I had Luke the Cardist do a Penny Hardaway card for me.
Oh,
Matt,
cool.
I'll have to get something from you. I want to put them all up on here so I can have a representation of everybody we talked to over
the archive. So. Absolutely. Yeah, the Art of the Card archives. Well, no, I think that's just such a cool thing that Topps does. And is Topps the only company you've worked with that has kind of gone to that length to highlight the artists behind the art? Upper Deck done anything similar? Any of the other companies?
Yeah, a lot of the companies have done different things.
Okay.
Upper Deck, they haven't done it in a while, but they used to have artist spotlights where they'd interview the artists, they post it up on their social media page, their website, and all that kind of stuff. They're fairly good at promoting the artists. Non-Sport Update Magazine, they're great at promoting the artists. They do these, the hot list. None of the artists understand how this hot list works, but we're all actually very excited whenever one of us is listed on there. We're like, we're number 2. We don't understand it, but this is cool. And they also do interviews with artists too. Cryptozoic is magnificent at promoting the artists, where every artist that works on any of their sets, they do quick little bio with links to their websites, and they spotlight 2 or 3 of the cards that they did for the set, and they post all of that on their website and on social media, which is great exposure for any of the artists. I have a bunch of cards next to me. Trying to find one. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I did Night of the Living Dead artwork for this set that came out a couple of years ago, and the guy that did that set, he has like a bio of each of the artists on the back of the card that they drew with like contact information, all that kind of stuff. And he sends like a stack of the cards that then we can sell off or whatever. Richard Parks from our Parks Cards, he does those weird sets like Mystery Science Theater and all that. It's just set for Manos, The Hands of Fate, which is this horrible horror movie from the 70s. But it's so bad, it's good. And so I did artwork for that. He reproduced some of it, sent me back copies, post information about the artists online and on the cards. He sent me like a printing plate of one of the cards, cool. Which is so cool.
Yeah, I've been wanting to pull the trigger on some printing plates. I think again, they're mixed. People love them, people hate them. I think the 3 of us probably love them because it's part of the process of making a card.
I've got one
I
right
think
behind me
that's
here.
really cool. Yeah. So I love that stuff. Like, you know, it's might not be the most valuable as we always kind of talk about here, but it's some of the coolest stuff to me, you know.
Do you ever get called in to do a press check at all, Matt, during the production, or once you sign off on the artist proof, then the production is fully handled by Tops or Upper Deck, whoever you're working with. They never
Yeah.
necessarily call you out on site to say, hey, take one more look at this, you know, kind of check it out or anything like that.
No, the only exception to that, so like it's always like I send the artwork off. Sometimes it's a surprise, and I find out 6 months later, oh, you used that for blah blah blah. Because
Right.
technically, like any kind of freelance project, once you do the artwork and you send it off to the client, it's theirs.
Yeah.
You can build it into the contract of like these are the limitations, but by and large, especially when it's a licensed property, like you do something for Disney, you send it off to Disney, they can do whatever they want with it. It's you've been paid, that's done. If they want to send you copies of it, that's cool, but it's up to them. Or if they want more feedback from you, that's up to them. One exception was when I did this. It was this impressionist gallery for Topps Gallery, like 3 or 4 years back, and one of the graphic designers at Topps contacted me, and he was like, "Hey, what do you think about this background? I'm thinking about using art with like." Then I'll create a background and then put the player's portrait on top, or you could do a painted background. So there's like a little bit of back and forth, which was cool. But otherwise, everything else, it's all in-house, especially with Topps. You know, they're working with MLB. They're trying to do the licensing and all that kind of stuff. And their graphic designers are super talented too. So whatever they come up with, generally, I'm going to like it. So
That's really cool to hear the collaboration, right? That back and forth, and that it was kind of free flowing, you know, for some of those projects. I've got to think that the designers that Tops has and Upper Deck and everybody else, you know, I mean, are all world class and got to be a lot of fun to work with, just as a designer and an artist. I think one of the things that stands out that you've mentioned a few times already today, Matt, is the Lord of the Rings set that you've just recently posted on your Instagram. How did that differ from Star Wars in terms of the subject matter? Did you find it, you know, fairly standard? We're still drawing people and places and things, or was it a bit of fresh air, you know, to maybe draw a dragon or two, and that sort of and that you know those sorts of characters in that sort of environment?
um, it was pretty similar to Star Wars in that it's another one of those sets where you have to follow by the rules of the license holder because you want everything that you do to look good for their license. There's also little restrictions of like, there's a famous one for Marvel where like you can't draw Howard the Duck without pants. You know, a lot of people like joke about that. So like little things like that. And then with Lord of the Rings, you know, you're working off of a lot of stills. You can't go too crazy with things. You can't, you know, do like too many like, you know, I'm going to redraw everything and have the characters from The Hobbit, let's say, be with the characters from Return of the King. That's not part of the movies that we're drawing. But it was still a lot of fun, and it was a little bit different because I hadn't drawn any of the characters from those films before. With Star Wars, it's kind of similar to that, where, you know, you're drawing what's in the movies or the TV shows. And that's what you're limited to. You're not going to draw, you know, Carrie Fisher saying next to an animated character. They never did live action animated. But there's always going to be new characters that you can draw. Like with Book of Fett and now Andor coming up, you know, there's all those new characters that I've never drawn before. Now I will, which is cool. And then there's other sets like the Marvel comic sets where that one you have way more freedom on. So you're drawing like Deadpool and Spider-Man, you still have to make it make sense because, you know, maybe this character and that character, they never interacted in the comic books. So you wouldn't want to draw that on a card. But you can draw them doing whatever you want in any kind of scenario. You know, maybe Deadpool's, you know, swinging through the streets of Tokyo, you know, fighting, you know, whatever. You know, a lot more freedom. You're not just basing it off of something that's already been shown in a movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
It's got to be pretty fun to come up with some scenarios for some of those characters, I'd imagine. Joe, sorry, you had something?
Oh, I was just saying, I hadn't thought about how the expansion of the Star Wars universe, you know, it kind of gives you more characters and personas to play with. To my mind, I'm a big Star Wars fan, of course, but it's like, yeah, must get sick, of drawing, Luke Skywalker over and over and over again. But I guess you do get an opportunity to draw new characters. I'm sure the opportunity to draw Grogu or Baby Yoda was a pretty fun, chance when we went through the first round of The Mandalorian. So that's really fascinating, because Disney has really kind of supercharged that franchise, right?
Yeah.
In the last decade or so, and you've really seen them blow that out. Were you involved at all, or with the 206 cards, the new Star Wars release there,
Oh,
on the small cigarette style cards?
yeah, yeah. No, not at all.
Okay.
And none of the artists were either, because those are all photo cards
Oh,
within the
okay.
graphic design team in
I see.
house, I would imagine. Then they did the backgrounds and stuff like that.
I see. I
But
see.
yeah,
Okay.
no artwork in that one.
Man, well, I think that'd be a fun crossover. I think that's something Top should really look into. As some of those really small mini cards, I think that'd be a lot of fun, and maybe a fun challenge for some of the artists. Um, Looking through again
We
your
used to, by the way,
go ahead, yeah, please.
we used to do these wide vision sketch cards for Tops. They haven't done them in years, but they were sets that they sold only online. So they did like a Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, Return of the Jedi. They didn't do all the movies, but they did a bunch of them, and they're like this big, the sketch cards. And they're so much fun to work on. They're unique. So it would be cool if Top started doing that kind of stuff again. Like maybe it's online exclusives, like the T206 or the Sapphire set.
Right,
So you
right,
never
right.
know. With Fanatics, looks like they're going to do some different stuff.
I think it will push some innovation in the hobby. Honestly, I think we've got a lot of money coming into the hobby, which is exciting. I know there are some concerns, and I share them, right, about certain sets maybe going away. That there being a lack of competition. But overall, the conversations that Chris and I have the privilege of having, speaking with people and getting to speak with people from all across the hobby. I mean, I feel like it's just there's never been more energy and excitement about the trading cards and the things that we love to collect. And I think more and more people are finding, traction, right, with their role in the hobby, right? Some of us are just supporters. We just want to collect. Others, are on kind of the supply end. I'm actually generating artwork or content, and we're all trying to find a way to make that work. And I'm encouraged by it. By and large, I know Fanatics is out there looming, but I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for artists in particular, to really start leaving their own personal mark on these trading cards and create more exclusivity across the hobby, which is something that I think, even though we don't like to talk about the value of cards, that's a huge economic driver just for the vitality of our group. So I'm excited to see what Tops comes up with. I'm excited to see what these other companies come up with, for artists to continue to push you guys into the spotlight. Because I think these are just the work that you've done here, and the work that you have available through Tops. It's really fun to look through, like Chris was saying. I mean, it's just really enjoyable. Full disclosure, I just watched the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy this week. So those cards, I mean, I'm playing those memories in my head. Of course, carrying those memories with me this weekend, as the great movies that they are, and they really do come to life. There's something very, very enjoyable, welcoming, and human about the sketches and the artwork that you do, Matt. And so it's just a pleasure to scroll through there on your Instagram. You have a lot of artwork up on your website as well. I got, I think, one final question for you, and then we'll wrap this up. What is the best part about having a full time job in the hobby, for the last 9 or 10 years?
I'm not sure if I can like just say like one thing. I mean, like,
Yeah.
is it having my artwork reproduced on a baseball card, which is still really cool. I keep copies of those for myself. And actually, some of the gallery cards they were ending up had them signed by the players. I mean, just sticker autos, but I didn't care. I've been searching them out. I got the Yachty one that's signed by him and stuff like that. And as a baseball fan and collector, that's really really cool. On the like other aspects of meeting fellow artists and learning from them, I think also being forced to do it might sound kind of weird, but being forced to do so many drawings in a limited amount of time makes you a better artist, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to try different styles, working on your likenesses. I look at the artwork that I did anywhere from 5 years ago to even 2 years ago. Compare that to what I'm doing today. I feel like I just keep improving. And part of that is because I just keep doing so many trading cards. So, in a way, I guess doing the trading card artwork has made me a better artist.
I think that would be pretty cool too, to like, if somebody discovered you or another artist, 7 years ago, and then as they keep collecting, seeing that progression and growth, I think would be really cool. It's almost like different periods of that artwork or
Yeah.
artists. It's really
Well, and
cool
I
to
can
see.
I can
So
speak as a graphic designer, Matt, not necessarily as an artist, but I've gone through different phases in my career where I've been challenged, more than I was before, and it's been a struggle at times, right? But then it's also really rewarding to be like, yo, I can do that now, right? I can
Yeah.
put out a logo in this amount of time or whatever. In your case, I can put out X number of cards in a week, 2 weeks.
Mhm.
You kind of unlock something, I think, inside of you, which is really fun. Again, as an artist, none of us want to just be machines, do outputting productivity 1000% of the time. But it's
Yeah.
kind of nice to know that you've got an extra level there, and as an artist, you can really punch some stuff out. So
Mhm.
I totally can understand how rewarding that feeling is, and especially at the level that we're talking about, right? I mean, it's not just 50 sketches, it's doing 50 sketches of Star Wars intellectual property that's going to get mass produced. It's really
Yeah.
incredible stuff, man.
Yeah, I've
um,
thought a few times that like the amount of cards that I've done, I post one or two cards every day on Instagram and Twitter. Like I do the whole like social media scheduling on my accounts. So everything's like scheduled about 2 to 3 months out in advance. But I've done so many sketch cards, I think I could probably do it 2 or 3 years in advance and still have artwork to post.
wow.
That's incredible. What's the best place for folks who are interested in seeing more of your artwork? How can they find that online?
Instagram or Twitter.
And that's
Okay. And
at
we'll
Stewart Illustrations on Instagram, and
Yeah.
that's at mattstewartillustrations.com online.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
we'll put the links and everything in the bio. Matt, is there anything that you want to tease out that you're working on that you're excited about coming up that people can stay tuned for?
Yeah, for like published stuff, I have the Vladdy Senior card in museum collection, waiting on copies to be mailed to me. Because Topps sends me like a stack of copies for myself, which is really cool.
Hmm.
And then I worked on a Hammer Horror series for this trading card
Mm,
set. So Hammer Horror is like from the UK, 70s, 80s, and all that. I did a drawing for that set that I was really, really happy with. The guy that did the set loved it as well, and he's used it for the wrappers on the trading card packs.
Oh,
That
very
should be
nice.
coming
cool.
out pretty soon. And then I have, oh man, I just forgot what it was. I have a lot of different stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's all be
Well,
coming out in the next like 2 years because everything's delayed. I mean, everyone knows
Right.
how delays are impacting everything, so it's kind of
yep.
crazy. You'll be seeing artwork that I've done 2 years ago coming out in the next couple of months,
Wow.
and it'll just keep happening for a while now too.
I knew things were backed up. I didn't realize it was still quite that delayed. But that's still going to be enjoyable to see your stuff hit the market, I'm sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll have all of Matt's links in the description of the video. As we promote it on Instagram, we'll be sharing some of his cards and tagging him so you can go follow his Instagram account. Yeah, we're super excited about this. We couldn't have thought of a better person to meet with on our return episode. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. It's been great. If you like, comment, and share, we're excited to get back into the swing of things. So thank you everybody for tuning in. And Matt, thank you so much. Honestly, it was a great conversation and loved hearing about your process, what you do, and what you have coming up. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Matt. Really enjoyed getting to speak with you this morning.